Shalom, hello, and welcome to our online Haaretz Minifest within the online edition of this year's Jerusalem Film Festival. We, meaning Haaretz journalists, will be talking to the directors and producers of some of the most intriguing films in this festival. Today I have the pleasure of hosting in this fine screen Noah Hatton, the director, screenwriter, photographer, editor and composer of this great film we just saw, Lapsis. Hello Noah, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me virtually.
Thank you for being here with us. How do we find you these days?
Oh, doing fine. I'm so honored that the film was programmed at the Jerusalem Film Festival. I can't believe I can't be there. I've never been to the festival, and it would have been a dream to show it there in person. But at least the audience got to see it, and here we are to speak about it. I'm just doing well, minding my own business here in upstate New York, and working on my next script in the meantime.
Did I miss something when I mentioned all your credits within this film?
No, in fact, you overcredited me. I did not photograph the film too, but
Oh,
I appreciate it. Sometimes I do shoot my own films. This time I had a cinematographer, so
yeah,
I won't take the credit. I'll give that back to
okay,
Michael Gomes, the cinematographer.
okay. That's because you relate to yourself sometimes as a one-man band, right? Some,
That's right. Right. Yeah.
something because of your documentary background. So what does this background give you as a fictional director right now?
I think that the documentary background gives me an interest in working class stories. I don't know that it gave me much preparation to make a fictional film. The fictional film is at such a different scale of collaboration with, over 30 crew members, and we had over 100 speaking parts on this film. And I almost feel like they're two parallel paths of work. As you mentioned, I often one man band the documentary work. I go out just with my camera and I make the films, and I've been doing that for 10 years now, and it feels like a very different path. This was a felt like the beginning of something new, and I was hungry for that kind of collaboration with more people. It can be very solitary, the documentary work sometimes.
So let's talk about this film. The world you created, which is very wholesome, is somewhat in a way a world after some sort of crisis. Do you think it is more valid now as a cultural document because of COVID-19?
In some ways it is, because there's an element of the world that deals with a mysterious illness that is keeping people inside, that somehow became more resonant, and the way people have to withdraw from society because of that mysterious illness became more resonant during COVID-19. I did not want that to happen, and I'm not necessarily glad it happened, but it did happen. I think that the way in which the labor is portrayed in the film also has become more relevant in many ways. Here in the U.S., we had a big struggle over uh, an issue in California called Prop 22. It was a political amendment to their state legislator that gave gig economy companies more ability to exploit people, and unfortunately passed. So that, I think, is being replicated all over the world in greater and greater degrees. I'm sure it's going on in Israel too.
Yeah.
Struggles with the gig economy. So I think that is only going to multiply as time goes on, and has since we made the film.
Would you make it any different now if you made it right now? Because of what happens?
No, maybe I would have been bolder to turn up the dial on the Omnia story a little bit. But I'm actually glad that I never wanted that story to overwhelm the central story of the film. So I may have gotten too carried away with it. So I don't want to, it's bad luck to think it could have gone any differently. Although I've certainly learned a lot making it, and I'm sure it would have been a different film had I made it right now. Because it was my first film. From day one to day 26 on set, I think I vastly changed as a filmmaker and learned, so much through the process. So it would inevitably have been different.
Yeah. What kind of a world is the one which Lapsis takes place in?
The world is not a future world. I'm not so much interested in future sci-fi. I think it's what I call parallel present. And it's our world, but displaced to the side slightly. And I think that's, for me, that's a very potent form for allegory. to reflect our world sideways instead of in the future. And you know, the quantum computing element of it is not really present in our current, you know, society yet, but it certainly is right around the corner, and we're hearing rumbles of it. I don't know if this would ever actually happen in the future, so I'm not expecting to, you know, be the predictor of something. But I think in many ways I was also interested in that retro futuristic aesthetic, because it would help people understand that this world could very much be a version of ours that has aged a little, and it almost feels like the late 90s in many ways technologically. So I didn't want it to feel like some untouchable future that it feels out of reach.
No, I think it's part of what makes this film so great. Also, you said that this film is blue-collar sci-fi, which is a term I really like. And it also made me think about, during the screening, about the film Blue Collar by Paul Schrader, which is also about a working environment and a very abusive working environment. Do you see other films, sci-fi films, as peers to this blue-collar sci-fi sub-genre?
There are some, yes. I mean, you know, I don't know necessarily know if I would call it a sci-fi film or a even a blue collar. I think it's kind of blue collar, but this film I had in my mind very much making this was Holy Motors by Leos Perret from 2012.
Yeah.
And I just mention it because here we have a character who is we sort of follow this character through this unknowable job he's doing through a day of going in and out of this limo and like sort of entering these different worlds, and the immersive world building of that film is just mind blowing to me. And so it comes to mind just because it's the kind of sci-fi I'm most interested in, where just enough is explained or given to you to hold you in the world, but it doesn't feel like it needs to over-explain too much. And I was always struggling with that in this film, is how much of the world do you need to explain versus not. You know, films like Brazil too, that's kind of like gonzo sci-fi, were influential. And, you know, more of the Charlie Kaufman vein of surrealism, maybe not necessarily sci-fi, was also, you know, I love in Being John Malkovich, there's a kind of blue collar quality to this operation that they open up in this hallway of this like in between floor with people shuttling into the, you know, it's like I love these kind of low scale operations in sci-fi as opposed to the glossy worlds of white collar sci-fi, which I think I might be interested in exploring sometime, but certainly not in this film.
Yeah, well, we park our cars in the same garage regarding that topic. Also, you published your production handbook as an open source document in your production company's website, which is called Couple Threes, right? Am I right?
That's right.
And this production book focuses on equality, humility, and solidarity, supportive openness, and an orientation to process. This seems to be also the agenda behind the film itself. I mean, it's sort of became one. The handbook and the film itself, I think.
Yeah, I appreciate you calling that out. So it is available. People can go at the word couple, COUPLE 3films.com, and they can see this open source book that they could use on their own productions if they want. We've adapted it from a handbook that a laboratory uses in Newfoundland, a lab called CLEAR that studies marine plastics, that I made a documentary about the year prior to making Lapsus. So it's an interesting trajectory for that document to come from a scientific practice into a film practice. But it was just, you know, to make a film that is about these things and that supports the collective action as a solution to this kind of oppressions in this world of labor writ large. To make a film about that and then to somehow reproduce the abuses that I've seen on film sets growing up and other films that I've participated in would just have been so backwards to me. So it was like natural to figure out a way that we could replicate the kind of labor we want to see happen in the world on our actual film set. And then moving forward, I think I'll continue to use this document. So it's become a bit of a manifesto for us as a team who makes films together to organize our labor and to organize our relations on set.
I was really surprised when I read on your production book that everyone was paid above minimum wage, which is not very often on indie films, right?
No, and that's a big one. Is that
Yeah.
a lot of the times when you're making your first film as a writer director, you make it on the backs of paying people $100 a day or $0 a day. 50. I'll give you $50 a day. Can you come and sweat for me and help me make my film? And you can get. Listen, I could have gotten many friends to do that, and you kind of trade in whatever relations you have with them for this favor. It's like helping you move or something, but they come and do it for 25 days or whatever, and it's exhausting, hard labor. Now that's fine. People maybe would volunteer to do that or would do it for me, and that's great. But my problem with that is that I don't think you should make a film unless you're paying people minimum wage, at least, hopefully more, but at least minimum wage, because you as the writer director of the film will receive all the glory. You'll get this rocket engine if the film does well into your career, and you'll end up inevitably leaving people behind, and some of those relationships could sour too if they feel like all of a sudden you're this wealthy guy and you paid people nothing on your film. So I just didn't believe I should make a film unless I could raise enough money to pay people minimum wage.
I think that's very nice of you. You used real robots, which contributes to the whole analog feel of the movie, the whole lo-fi sci-fi, if you'd like. How was it working with real robots as opposed to, I don't know, CGI?
There was no. I can't deal with CGI. I don't think it looks very good. There was no way we were going to try to do CGI robots, but there was also no way we were going to be able to afford to fabricate our own robots, our real robots, because we had a very specific vision of the kind of thing we wanted. You see in many cities these days, there's been some videos of like these little food delivery carts that go around that they're testing out. I don't know. This hasn't come to New York City yet as in a real way. I think people in New York City would just kick it over, but maybe it's in some other cities already. But I think they're trying to roll these out, companies like Seamless, to sort of automate food delivery. So we were looking at those, and we were also looking at robots from like companies like Boston Dynamics that make these really scary like humanoid and dog robots. And we thought, okay, what could we make? What could we find? So we found a lab at University of Pennsylvania that made robots for Boston Dynamics back in the 90s that are the ones that are in the film with these legs.
Yeah.
And they're like out of commission now, but we got this lab at University of Pennsylvania to make it a student project for the summer. They made it an academic project. They sent 3 students to control the robots on our set, and it cost us $0. And that was a huge, lucky discovery for us. They got something out of it too. And those are the robots. And we built the upper parts of them that have the kind of character and the personality with those instruments that come out.
Yeah, that's really creepy. So,
yeah, we were interested in this kind of uncanny valley of, not that they were too human-like or something, but the uncanny valley of creepy and cute. And,
yeah.
And could we feel like, oh, look at this slow-moving, like funny little thing, and then also give them a little menace too at some point.
Can you please tell us about your latest documentary film, In Silico? It's been going on for 10 years, am I right?
Yeah, I've been shooting a documentary for 10 years where I go once a year to Switzerland, where there's this project called the Blue Brain Project, and then it became the Human Brain Project, and it involved all of Europe and also Israel, scientists from Hebrew University, who've been trying to simulate the human brain on supercomputers. And the head of the project, the reason it's 10 years is the head of the project gave this talk that I saw 12 years ago now, saying, I'm going to simulate the human brain in 10 years, and I'll send a hologram back to TED to give a talk when I'm done. Thank you very much. And he left. And I saw that and I thought, okay, I've been interested in making a documentary about the brain or about neuroscience, but things seem to take so long. The science is slow moving. How could I ever tell a story? And so this gave me a time span, albeit kind of a crazy one, but I committed to it, just trying to every year get over there and make this longitudinal film. And so that's what this is. It's called In Silico. Lots happened over the decade. The project kind of got mired in some controversy, an open letter that hundreds of scientists signed against them. And but they continued. And so the film chronicles the attempt to simulate a brain on computers. And it just premiered at Doc NYC here in New York. We're trying to now figure out how to get it out internationally, but hopefully in 2021 it will become available, but people can go to insilicofilm.com and sign up to keep up to date with it.
How does it feel to work on a project for 10 years? It's like your boyhood.
It is. At the time, it's been about, well, when I finished it, it was about a third. It was a third of my life so far. And, from 22 to 32 is a significant chunk, hopefully. It's really when you feel like your adult life. So I feel like this is what I've been doing with my life so far. And to finish it is very strange. I didn't never plan to, but in the film, I rolled in my own experience to it. So you see me age 10 years. Hopefully I don't look very different. I don't know, but I think that the filmmaking changes, and certainly my attitude towards the story changes. So hopefully that's interesting for people to see.
Also, how do you compare now that you're also, we touched that on my first question, but now that you're also a fictional director, how do you compare your documentary films to your briefly new fictional film? How does it, what's the difference for you as a director? How is your experience as a director different in those both different terms?
Yeah, I think there's different levels to answer that at. The most basic one is that there's something nice about the more solitary work in documentary filmmaking. Like when you get to control, when you get that amount of control, there's something intoxicating about that on a documentary. But the thing about documentary too is that even as you think you're controlling so much, you run up against the real world, and you're trying to capture a reality, and you're trying to push, people and interview people into some idea you have sometimes that they're not arriving at. So that tension is interesting to me, but it's very different than the tension from fiction filmmaking, which is one where you're collaborating with people, but you do have I write a script, so I have full control of the world we're making, but the realization of the world comes through collaboration. And so collaboration can be rich, it can be tense, but I really enjoy the opportunity to get a little bit outside of my comfort zone and to work with other people in fiction filmmaking. But as I said earlier, on a subject matter level, I think the films are similarly interested in my older documentaries on working class conditions. This In Silico one, this one about the brain, is a little bit of an exception. It's sort of like it's like a sci-fi film as a documentary. But I think I'll be interested in sci-fi and in science moving forward. I'm writing a new sci-fi script, so I think that maybe is the link between them and will continue to be my main interest.
Cool. I was amazed to see that this is Dean Imperial's first performance as an actor, as a professional actor in movies. I read that he was an actor before. He came to New York City as an actor, but then he became a writer. And now you brought him to the big screen eventually. How was it for him and for you working with an sort of an amateur who's not an amateur at all?
That's right. When I was trying to raise the money to make this film, I was told over and over again, like if you're trying to make a film we weren't even trying to raise that much, but even when you're trying to raise anything these days, above like a micro budget, we wanted to have the film to have some scale to it, to have some scale in the world, and to have these cubes and be able to shoot outside for 3 weeks. So that required a bit, but to raise it, I was told over and over again, try to find someone with a name, like try to find a star at least to put in this lead role, or maybe in the second lead. But like, who is this guy, Dean Imperial, that you're just like set on having as the star of your first film here? And there was no other way I could have done it, because I had written the film for this guy, Dean Imperial, who nobody knew. And he was a friend of mine, and he is a friend of mine in New York. And I had seen him doing a reading once, but more than anything, I just had a gut feeling that Dean was a fantastic performer who had not been given a chance. And I had written this world around him to embody this character, Ray. So there was no other way to do it. And we ended up just persevering and putting our own money into it and doing the film as a result. But I was sort of like nervously, I didn't know what to expect necessarily with Dean, because I hadn't seen him on screen ever. But I remember the first day shooting, it just was like, it was extremely validating to see how good he is right away, because it took that any worries right out of my head. I think he's a wonderful performer. I don't know that I hope he continues to act and that people find him for things, because I think he almost has like a James Gandolfini energy to him, and we've lost Gandolfini now, so I think there's a void there. Maybe Dean can step in, you know.
That is literally my next question, literally, because I heard you said that he has a 70s mobster quality, and I was thinking all the time about early Tony Soprano, even when he said it, the way he dresses, the way he cuts his hair, his sunglasses, and even when he says "there he is," which is like the most famous Tony Soprano phrase.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that as just being Dean's friend, but when I saw him on the monitor directing him in a film, I suddenly thought, holy cow, this is like, there are angles where you shoot him at that he looks exactly like Gandolfini, and then the mannerisms line up too. So it was kind of mind blowing. You know, I don't think it does, but it doesn't feel like he's doing a Gandolfini thing.
No, not at all.
It's truly who he is, you know. And so I love that. I think that's sort of a dying breed of actor, and he does feel to me like he's from another era. So I was kind of captivated by that energy.
Yeah, I thought it was great as well. Well, thank you, Noah. It was such a delight talking to you, and I think your film is just great, and I'm sure that everyone who saw this film right now with us also thinks this way. Thank you very much for joining us in the online edition of the Jerusalem Film Festival, and I hope to see you in the real edition of the Jerusalem Film Festival very soon.
I really hope to make it in years to come, and I really appreciate you having the virtual conversation with me. This has been really fun. Great questions. And
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Godspeed.
Thank you so much. Have a good time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.